prepare, respond, serve. This is 5 Stone. The contents of this podcast are the personal opinions and views of 5 Stone and our affiliates. This is not a recommendation for medical practice or a guide for decision making or even to take place for your own personal judgment. We recommend that you always seek out in-person professional training and always follow your established policies and procedures. Now, with that said, let's get after it. Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of 5 Stone's Motivation Mondays. This one is a topic called perception versus reality. So I was going through kind of a hard time in my life, and I was called up my brother, and I was like, hey man, here's what's going on. I started going through all these different issues that were bothering me. I could feel my blood pressure rising. My heart rate was going up. I was getting anxious, and I was just like, I've had it. I've had enough. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. I'm fed up, and I've had it. I'm not taking this anymore. And then he just calmed me like he always does. Just said, so Eric, tell me something. Is that really what's going on? I said, what are you talking about? Yes, it's what's going on, and here's why. Here's the proof. I've got this. Okay. So is that really what's going on, or is that how you perceive it? So what? He said, is that how you're perceiving what's happening? Because your emotions are tied to this. And he went in to tell me about emotional intelligence. And that's another book. If you guys haven't had a chance to check it out, you need to really check that book out. But he got to tell me about this emotional intelligence and telling me about perception versus reality. And as we kind of got deeper into the weeds on this topic, I really started to calm down. I really started to step back from my perception of the situation that I was viewing and realize that the way that I was seeing it may not be what the reality of the situation was. So I learned quickly that perception is not always reality. And as I got this book and started reading through this book, it really tied directly into that. And this book is called Warrior Mindset. If you get a chance to read this book, it's another good one. This is Mental Toughness Skills for the Nation's Peacekeepers by Michael Askin and Lieutenant Dave Grossman. It's a really good book, and it talks about several topics for our nation's peacekeepers, for our first responders, for our war fighters. And in this book, it talks about the influence of perception. And it says on here, stressors make no distinction but amongst their targets. Stressors don't. And mission stress occurs when a mission may be your own personal mission. It might be with your family. It might be with your work, whatever it might be. You might be in the military, first responder, whatever. But mission stress occurs when, A, there's a perceived imbalance between the demands of the mission and your perception of your ability to meet those demands. Again, mission stress occurs when there is a perceived imbalance between the demands of the mission and your perception of your ability to meet those demands. And B is mission stress occurs when or where failure to meet the demands of the mission has important consequences for you. So it's directly impacting you. That's whenever you begin to feel that stress. And if you ever worked in a situation to where people's lives are at stake and the decisions that you make impact other people, or you are worried about a decision that you make may come back and backfire on you and therefore inhibit your well-being, your family, your success, your earnings, your income, whatever, that automatically adds to that stress. And that's what they're saying. Another thing in here says, when you learn to manage your perceptions, then you can better manage your stress. So how you perceive certain things is not always reality. Or maybe it is reality, but the way that you perceive it as a direct threat to you personally makes you become emotional. And then your thoughts and your actions and your words, just like I did with my brother, that becomes my reality. I speak it into existence. I speak it into reality because I feel it. I feel it. Well, just because I feel it may not mean that Blake over here feels it. He may not feel the same way that I feel about something. For him, it's not a reality. But I'm so emotional and tied up into this because it directly impacts me, and I may feel insecure, not prepared to handle certain situations, so I'll lash out. And all of a sudden, I've got to address this issue right now because this is the major problem. But if I were able to sit back from the situation and look at it from Blake's perspective, I might be like, you know what? This really isn't that big of a deal. Let's look at the facts of the matter and address this issue. So that's where it comes into the influence of perception, because perception is not always reality. And it had another good little thing in here that I want to read to you. It says it gives a comparison to the human emotion and reason. It compares it to, if you're from here in Kentucky, like what we are, to a horse and a jockey. Okay. The human organism is like a thoroughbred at the gate. He's a small man and it's a big horse. And if it decides to get excited in that small metal cage, the jockey is going to get mangled, possibly even killed. So the jockey takes great care to be gentle. The jockey is the reason and the horse is the emotion. So your reasoning can help to talk down your emotion, can help you become successful, can help you overcome that challenge, that fear, that loss of control often that we have. That is many of our greatest weaknesses. We lose control because we have emotional ties, and we have emotional ties because we have stress, and we often have stress because we're not physically or mentally prepared to handle that situation that's been thrown upon us. So no matter your situation, whether it's complex, whether it's mild, I want you to just think about the reality. Sit back, take a step back, take your emotions out of it and think, here's problem A. I need to do B so we can equal C to get this problem fixed. Is there a reason to raise a voice? Is there a reason to cry and get emotional over? Is there a reason to hurt somebody else's feelings? Is there a reason to lash out and make hasty decisions that maybe is not going to be beneficial in the long run? That may be something that you personally can kind of sit back and look at and reevaluate each one of those situations. Be aware of your stressors. When you begin to feel stress, you're going to notice things like your heart rate goes up. Maybe you have chest pain, you get lightheaded, you get dizzy, you get nauseated, you have, need to go to the restroom, you go to the bathroom, you need to go pee because it's like you're just getting so anxious you can't stand right before a big event. That's all signs and symptoms of stress. So if you see that stuff coming on you, know that. Be aware of that. Oh my gosh, I'm feeling the stress. Why am I feeling the stress right now? The reason most people feel stress is because they're not prepared to handle it. Whatever situation it is. I'm beginning to feel anxious and to feel stress right now, and that's because something's going to be out of control, or I feel like something's going to be out of control. I'm perceiving that I can't control it, which is what he says right here. It's your perception of being out of control. So the way to overcome that is to become more prepared, which is what we do at 5 Stone. Prepare, respond, and serve. Prepare your mind. Prepare your toolbox to have your kit, your equipment in your toolbox that you need to be really accessible, and know how to use those items in your toolbox under a high stress situation, which is what me and John Conover talked about on a recent podcast. And that will help to reduce your stress. So whenever you're exposed to a situation, you have that calming reason because you know that you're prepared. You know you can handle that situation. And what you perceive at that moment, that all of a sudden comes on you, and you have that moment of, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do, and you start flipping out or you get angry. That attitude and that response is often in haste, and it's not very rational. So that's my encouragement for you guys, is to understand that not all the time our perception is the reality of the matter. Okay, myself included. I'm just as guilty as the next person. But if we can sit back and look at that and challenge ourselves to understand what causes our stress, why we're stressed, that we're likely not prepared because it's impacting us on a personal level, then we can become more prepared to handle the idea and the analysis of what the reality of the situation is. And then our emotions won't get out of control. Then we won't make false actions. So that's our podcast, Perception versus Reality. Know your weaknesses, and let's work hard to overcome those, because everything that we do impacts other people, everybody around us, whether it's a loss of attitude, whether it's a loss of control, whether it's not responding appropriately in a situation, when other people's lives or other people's livelihoods may be impacted by our decisions. So, guys, thank you so much for checking out our podcast. We're on 5stoneusa.com, all the social media websites and all the podcast hosting websites. We hope this is beneficial. Share it. Find somebody in need that might be suffering like you are with this type of an issue. If you're suffering from this, just like we are, we try to share this and talk about this amongst ourselves so we can help other people, and that's what we want. That's our goal. Prepare, respond, and serve, because someday you might be someone's first responder. Thank you guys so much, and we'll talk to you on the next podcast. This has been a production of Five Stone. I'd like to thank you guys for taking the time to check out our podcast and video cast today. You can check us out online at fivestoneusa.com. That's the number 5, fivestoneusa.com. We are also on all the social media platforms. Our podcasts are now live. Video casts are on YouTube, and our audio podcasts are on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Amazon Music, all the major podcast platforms. Thank you guys. Again, we cannot thank you much for all your support and all that you do for us. Remember, prepare, respond, and serve, because someday you might be that first responder.